cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut. Welcome to the top cut.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut UK podcast. My name is Sunny. I am with my co-host, Giant Skyhawk. How are you?
I'm good. Just had a 6-round local today. Scene in Edmonton.
That feels like a big local.
It is a big local. I think we had 35 people out, which for Edmonton is crazy. We've really been starting to get it going. So that was fun. And then
Yeah,
shot some hoops in the driveway. My 50-year-old mom still shoots free throws better than I do. So I got owned at.
She always will too.
I got owned at 21. Well, 5-4, but it was close. But otherwise, yeah, good day.
Well, before we get too far in and into the good stuff, you got to sit through all of our ad reads. So a huge thank you to, of course, all of our patrons for your continued support. There will be featuring at the end of the podcast. Of course, a huge thank you to ETB and Steelfox Games, my two locals, for their continued support of the podcast. Of course, we also want to thank a Dragon Shield and TCG Player, and of course, Tier Zero Games and Gem Accessories for all of the affiliate links that you can see. And Gem and Tier Zero, I believe you get a discount when you use the affiliate link. Be sure to check out our Teespring. We have Apple and Spotify ratings if you want to leave us a rating. And of course, be sure to check out our Discord server and follow us on Twitter. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and get on into today's content. Of course, we've got an esteemed guest with us today. The one and only, the world champion, Mr. Paulie Aronson. How are you doing this evening?
Who, what, where, who, how, when? Hey, guys, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing good.
Yeah? Why don't you tell the people who somehow might not know who you are a little bit about yourself and why you are here today?
I'm here because I'm, Sunny and Skyhawk were nice enough to have me on. But I am a two-time YCS champion and current world champion for the TCG.
Absolutely. So, Paulie, I wanna ask you. I'm gonna jump straight into it. How does it feel, just when you extend that handshake in the finals of the World Championship? How is it?
That's always an interesting question. It's like, it's weird because like, well, I try. First of all, like, whenever I'm in like finals like that, and you're lucky enough to win, I try not to like pop off too hard because like my first thought is always like I feel you feel so bad for the opponent, right? Because it's like they came so close in their second, so like I don't want to like be disrespectful or like make the opponent feel worse. So like I try to like, always keep it like kind of like low key and not like get too excited. But it's certainly exciting. And it's also kind of like overwhelming a little bit, especially at Worlds, because it's just like, whoa, like this is big. So I just we shook hands and kind of just like looked down at my cards and was like, okay, we did it. I put a lot of work in and we got it. It paid off. Yeah.
So I am a little bit curious. The World's format is so fundamentally different from the format that you would play a YCS in. Not just from the card pool, but maybe also from individual rulings. Like, for example, I believe the time rules were TCG time rules, whereas I believe I heard that the hand trigger rules were maybe the OCG hand trigger rules.
Yeah, so we used. I don't think that ever really came out for anything except for probably increase the popularity of Ghostmourner. But yeah, hand trigger rules were OCG. Time rules, we did use TCG time rules. This was the first year at where Worlds used the TCG time rules. So that was a big change. At least for the OCG players, for sure. Right. Yeah, and then but for testing, the main thing was just testing decks, and it was such a wide open format. Like there was like 17 viable decks or something like that, and just like a lot of them, and at least 10 good ones. And there was a lot of testing, and trying different things. And it's weird too because in a closed format or in a closed event, or when it's such a small event with such a small number of players, like it's hard because everyone kind of is trying to conceal what they're doing from like the rest of the players. Let's say because and so which makes it very like you're kind of going in blind because you don't really know what everyone else is going to be doing. Although by the end, like I kind of like could work with enough players. I had an idea of what some of the other players were doing. And I kind of was pretty open about what I was doing. I think I told like everyone like the day before the end, like I'm playing Dragon, like I don't care, I'm no one to tell everyone. but certainly at least in the beginning, and for sure partly like it's kind of just a lot of unknowns.
So I do have one last question about the Worlds format and the experience at Worlds. So with Worlds, you mentioned that it's a lot smaller tournament. So I think there's only around like 28-ish players total in the main event. And then it was 7 rounds this year instead of 5, and then it cut to top 8. So do you think that with the tournament being so much smaller and so much more personal than like a YCS or anything like that, do you think that the size of the tournament impacted how you felt about winning? Because I feel like winning, it's almost like winning locals versus like a 600-man regional. Just that the quality of play is so much higher. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because like people always say that like the joke is like, oh, you just have to win locals. It's like, no, that's not even remotely a correct comparison because you're playing your locals doesn't have like 30 of like the best players in the world there, you know?
Yeah.
So like I think it's like wet like yeah, I always think that's a fun comparison, but it is interesting like because it was a similar question for the playoff because I qualified for Worlds through the points playoff this year. It was not through the main event. And so, there was this debate I was having with some friends a couple months ago. We were discussing, like, I wonder which is harder, like, qualifying for Worlds through the main event or through the playoff this year. Because the playoff was 32 people this year.
Yeah.
It was the top 16 from the 2019 through 2022 points rankings season. And the top 16 from the 2022 to 2023 ranking season.
Right.
And all 32 of us played together in one big playoff for only 2 spots, to Worlds. So it was like,
insane,
which is harder? Making top 4 in the 3,000 person main event with like everybody, but where like obviously the concentration of top players is way, way lower versus the 32 person playoff where it's only 4 rounds you have to win. But like it like the names on that list too was like crazy. Like it was literally like almost
it was insane.
Almost an exact correlation to like the top 32 players in North America. Not exact, but like pretty close. It was like it was crazy. Like and I don't know the answer, but I know I didn't make the top cut in the main event this year. I bubbled. I was 9-3, but I won the playoff. So
I think that you take that end. I think you take the end result like 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, I'm happy with the end result for sure. 100%. Which overall is harder? I don't know, but I know for me, I guess we worked out. The playoff worked out, so it was interesting. Kind of having to prepare twice this summer for like an ultra competitive, low player count closed event like that, the playoff and then Worlds. Because both times it's such an interesting dynamic of like everyone's trying to be concealed about what they're playing. You don't know what everyone's playing. You can assume there's going to be like a higher concentration of meta than normal, but then it's like. Really for the playoff, it was like, well, on the other hand, are people going to intentionally try to like pick off the wall picks because no one wants to play cash mirrors all day? I think in the end, like half the 16 of the 32 ended up playing cash. So most people did end up going with their comfort picks, which I think is usually the best choice. Including myself, I played cash. And then but then for Worlds, it was even more interesting because for Worlds, like with cash banned, the meta was even more wide open, and it was just like there were so many decks to choose from. It was interesting.
Yeah, me when
were there any decks that were? Go ahead, Scott.
I was just gonna say me when I have to win a 4-round locals, but my locals is like Jesse Cotton, Steven Santoli. You gotta turn through everybody. Yeah, well, I think that's because I know Steven's from Canada. I have some friends in Toronto that I played against him a lot. And he took
Steven's a great player.
Yeah, he took EXO, and so that was like people playing what they were comfortable with because that's what he's been on for like forever. It is funny how that works in a smaller thing. It's like I could try the debate between do I try to play what I think is the best thing in the room or the thing I think I'm gonna perform the best with. And like at a huge event with a whole bunch of rounds, it's maybe better to pick the best thing in the room. But in a smaller event where you're like I need to play perfect against all of these people, then it's like I'll go. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. I'm always an advocate for I think especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, you should like you should always play the deck that you know the best, that you have the most experience with. Even for big events, I will say. And that's a mistake I used to make a lot. Like years ago, I would always try. My goal in testing was always to find the best deck, like the conceptual best deck, like in terms of matchups, overall meta call. And over the years, I came to realize, like, if you play the deck that like the deck that you like have been grinding with, and you know all the interactions against all the decks, and like your siding patterns have all been you've refined all the siding patterns, you have the siding patterns down, like your build is refined. I think that's always the best choice over the like conceptual best deck. A lot of players, like there's some players who just like they'll switch like the day before the event because like they heard about like some hot tech or like some crazy deck, or just like because something new came out and it's supposed to be like the best deck, and then just you're just not. It's just you're never gonna be able to play perfectly with a deck that you're still learning. So a big advocate for playing the deck the most that you know the best, as long as like it's within reason, right? As long as it's like we're talking about like a meta deck, not like battery event or like something like that. But
yeah, I'm gonna pull up with Ally of Justice because I know where to use Cycle Reader on every card in the game.
Yeah, that might not work out so well.
Makes sense.
But yeah, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, like there's so many like decks that are like semi-viable. Like there's probably at least 20 decks that you like. If you know your deck really well, you could probably pull up and at least top regional or do something cool. So
yeah,
YCS like.
An interesting question about that duality between best deck in the room and best deck in your hands, right? Because I think that there does come a time where maybe a deck isn't super viable anymore. I'm running into this issue with Sword Soul. I've been playing Sword Soul consistently for a year and a half. It is power crept, and I need to transition. But the issue is, like, when do I get to the point where it's like, okay, I really need to transition, but it's still the deck I'm most comfortable with, right?
So I think, so for me, I often run into an issue of, it's like the week before an event, and like I've been testing a couple different decks, but I haven't become super proficient with any of them. But the deck I was playing for the last event is still viable. I'll play that deck. If you have recognized that your comfort deck, so to speak, has been power crept, I would say at that point, like if like picks, how do I put it? Like the part of the deciding factor is how much time you have left before the event, let's say, right? So if there isn't like a particular event you have coming up and you have time, then I would say if you recognize that your deck has been power crept, then just pick whatever it is, or maybe a couple decks and just start practicing them. What part of that issue of like just going with your comfort pick is like when there is an event coming up and and you're out of time, right? Or when there's only a couple weeks, maybe, let's say, and you aren't going to have that much time over the next couple weeks, so you have to make a concession. You know what? I'm going to stick with this deck. That is my comfort deck.
Sure.
But if there isn't like, if there isn't like a particular event coming up that you're testing for, and then I would say like if you have the time to practice, in other words, like if you have the time to practice the new deck and you don't have to go with your comfort pick, then especially if you think your deck has been power crept,
right?
Then might be time to move on.
I was actually going to bring up you and Sword Soul because we have had conversations. It was like you were almost at the jumping off point with Super Heavy, and then they banned Scarecrow, and I was like, he's gonna keep
I had the deck put together.
Keep playing Sword Soul for the rest of the time, but no, that's really good.
Okay, I have a regional tomorrow. I have the deck put together, and it's like, oh no, nope, never mind. So
it's gone.
Yeah.
Cool. So how have you been preparing to dive back into Dune? Because that's like you take 2 months off, you're back into TCG format. What's your process for learning a format? Is it just a billion games?
Yeah.
So even afterwards, I took like a 2-week break kind of from I didn't really play all, and just literally the last 2 weekends I've been learning all the Dune stuff. I sat down for last weekend I played two regionals, and like that was my first time. I was reading the Rescue Ace cards as I was playing against them. So I decided, I'm taking a break. I'll go in blind. It'd be like that. Normally, that's never how I approach it, though. So now, for example, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be going to YCS Vancouver, and so I'm now it's like, all right, I got 2 weeks left. Now I got to grind. So I've been trying to learn. I pretty much know. I've learned like first step right is like learning all the cards in the new deck. So like Rescue Ace, Unchained, the new Pearly stuff, the new the Chimera stuff, which is huge. I think that deck's really good. And then then it's like, all right, learning the combos. Like ideally, I'm going to try to play each of those decks myself at least a little bit, so I have an understanding of the combos, and then in the choke points and such, and like what cards are good against them. And then right now, I don't have a deck that I've kind of selected as like the deck I'm leaning towards. So right now I'm kind of just trying to test to practice them all a decent amount, and hopefully this is like the hardest part in my opinion is like trying to figure out which deck is like the right deck to focus on, because like until you know a deck really well, it's hard to accurately judge like which decks are actually better than each other. But like in order to get really proficient with a deck to that point, to be able to see it to its full potential, you have to pick it first, and you can't pick it until you know which ones. So it's like kind of like a paradox, where like you kind of just have to start trying to play them, and I often find I kind of just end up on one. It's like, well, I know this deck really well now. I'm favored in most of the matchups just because I know all the interactions so well. I'm just gonna stick with this one now, I guess. It's always like an interesting process, for me, like do that. So for the last like 8 events, it's always ended up being like, well, cash is still legal and I still know it the best, so I'm just playing cash again.
Still know what it does.
Worlds was different, with the exception of Worlds. But so like literally right now, if there is no ban list, I'm almost definitely still going to be playing cash again for Vancouver. Like for example, so but I'm hoping there's a ban list because I'm so sick of this deck.
Yeah, so I'll be at Vancouver as well. I really hope.
Awesome.
I really hope we're getting I don't know if they'll do it because there's the Team YCS in I think Sao Paulo the week before.
Yes. Yep, Sao Paulo this weekend.
They would have to do it on Monday, or they would have to like make it effective after the YCS. But then that sucks for the people playing the team event who still have to play under a Rise Hard pass.
Right. Well, I'm sure they wouldn't. I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, that's all. I'm like I'm curious if like, do you think they're gonna do a list? Do you think it's not gonna happen, or do we have to like flip a coin? Like I don't know.
As far as having any contradict or conflict with the YCSs, that's not too much of an issue because we've seen in the past they're definitely willing to just release the list and then have it go into effect after. Like if there is a YCS that weekend, they'll just go into effect after, and I think that's a great solution. So that
they could do it during round two.
Because if they weren't willing to do that, like there's 3 YCSs back-to-back weekends for the next 3 weekends. There's Sao Paulo, then Vancouver, then Cancun. So, I mean, unless they're going to not release the list until after all 3 YCSs, which I'm sure they won't, I don't think they'll do, they're going to have to release it and have it go into effect, like, the following week on one of these weeks. Because, either going to release it this weekend and have it go into effect after Sao Paulo, or they're going to release it the following week and have it go into effect after Vancouver. They could do either one. I'm guessing they might. I really don't know. I think either we'll get it tomorrow. Either we'll get it because like if they're gonna have it go into effect on the following Monday, they'll probably release it
tomorrow. It has to be Monday.
Like they could release it this Friday and then have it go into effect the following Monday. But I think they'll probably just do it on a Monday. So we're probably either getting it tomorrow or we're gonna get it the following Monday. In which case, it'll go into effect the following Monday, which would be after Vancouver. Probably. So either it's tomorrow. If we don't get a list tomorrow, I would say we're probably playing the current list for Vancouver.
Yeah, I guess. We'll find out before this airs. So
yeah.
If we get the list on Monday, this is going to be really funny for people to listen to.
Yeah,
I think we probably won't.
They could do it mid-round again.
Oh Jesus Christ!
That was fun. That was so. Oh my god, that was so crazy. I was like, everyone just starts running around like, oh, and I'm like, oh my god, the round's up, yay, finally. And then my friend's like, no, it's not up, and I'm like, damn it. And then I'm like, wait, then why is everyone running around? I'm like, okay, and then in my head, I'm like, okay, there's definitely a fire. There's definitely a fire here somewhere. What's going on? And then my friend's like, no, there's no fire. What?
Was it that insane? Were people running around that much?
It wasn't like that degree, but it was definitely like everyone was in motion, like talking, like there's there's a ton of buzz. And then I'm like, what the heck happened? And he's like, the ban list dropped. And I'm like, huh? Because in my whole 17 years of playing, I don't think we've ever had a ban list drop on a weekend. So that was very funny. That was a lot of fun. I like a
And
company does fun stuff like that. So
you know that it was intentional because if you go back and listen to the Konami podcast, Billy Brake is very specifically like 3 times. He's like, "So wasn't that fun?"
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Did it?
It was fun. The only disappointing part was looking at the list and immediately it was looking at the list, reading it over a second time, and immediately saying, "Oh darn, Castura is still the best deck. What are they doing?"
Yeah. I remember looking at it and being like, okay, a Rise Heart to 1, sure. Diablosis is gone. That's cool. We don't have like the zone locking nonsense anymore. And then Unicorn to 2. It's like, oh. Okay.
Yeah, you're like, oh,
we see the 1-card combo less often. That's awesome.
It's still the best deck. Okay.
It's like, oh, okay. Now we're just gonna make sure that people aren't having questions about whether to run Nib or not. We're just gonna solve that real quick and then be done with it.
Okay, so I guess we'll probably do another episode on this later. But while we've got you to snag your thoughts, let's say a list drops tomorrow for Vancouver. What do you want on it? Like, is there anything that you just like really, really want gone, or do you think they'll be more conservative with this one? Like, I don't know what your thoughts are.
I've been really wanting D-Barrier to get banned for like at least a year or 2 now. I think that's like the one card I would like to see get banned.
Let's speak it into existence, please.
I would like a Rise Heart ban. It's time, please. I don't want to play this anymore. I'm bored.
Please stop making me chain Forbidden Lance to Book of Moon. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, how do I do that? Yeah.
So I would like a Rise Heart and Barrier ban. I would like.
How do you feel about Erad?
Erad, I think about the funny thing about Erad is like I don't think it's actually like as problematic of a card as people think. It's definitely a card that could get banned. It's pretty blowouty, right? So I think that would be a fine ban, but it's not like I think it saw play uniquely that format because it was searchable off of in lab. Like, and that's why we kept seeing it so much in gameplay and in replays because it was searchable. If it weren't for that, yes, it was very good against Kashtira, but I don't think it normally would have seen that much play aside from that fact. Like, yes, people are now like, started like putting it like in their side decks and like all kinds of decks and stuff. But like, I think there's a reason that wasn't really done before this. And I think that's because I don't think it's generally a correct card to side, given that it's not searchable. I think because it was searchable in one deck, people like it put it in front of people, which made people want to start playing it, even though I don't think it was necessarily correct for people to be playing it.
Yeah, it seems like
in decks outside of lab.
Do you think that tactics changes the math on that?
Potentially. Like we're definitely moving toward one of the trends in the game overall is definitely like more board breakers over hand traps. But it could be a card that ends up still being an issue in the future. I know, like I can give you an example in Dragon Link for Worlds format. It was a very popular side card. Like Santiago, who also made top 4 with Dragon Link at Worlds, was siding them, I believe. I tested them. I personally felt it was very like there were too many hands where it just wasn't live because sometimes if you just don't open a Bishul, or if you have to use your Bishul as a link material, and then you have to choose between whether to make your play or keep your virus live, to where either way you're ending on like one less stop, than you would have been if the virus was just like a regular hard stop. So I ended up deciding I definitely did not want to play, and it just isn't live against that many matchups, or at least isn't that good against that many matchups. So I definitely decided I didn't want to. I ended up cutting it. I decided I didn't want to side it. Obviously, Santiago did, and he did very well with it. So it's certainly still a good card. But I think it's a good option. Personally, wasn't an option I would choose. But because of that inconsistency, I think that kind of balances it, and I think that's why it's kind of fair. It was just in lab that I think it was really overpowered because it was searchable. But we'll see. I think it'd be a fine card to limit or ban, just because it is for what it does. It is pretty volatile. It is pretty like swingy. So it would be a fine hit, but I don't think it needs to get a hit.
Okay. Anything else aside from like D barrier up like probably for like 6 years, honestly. And then
D barrier I think is I think floodgates in general I think are very unhealthy for the game. I personally think they're not great because of how volatile they are. Like I don't usually side floodgates, but I a lot of people do, and I think they are very like they're so swingy. So I think like floodgates in general, I think are kind of unhealthy, but especially lingering floodgates, because at least regular floodgates, like you can cosmic them, right? You can twin them. They're at least somewhat interactable with. And also like they affect both players. So a lot of times in grind games, you end up getting stuck under your own floodgate, like with cards like Summon Limit or Spell Fragrance or Rivalry. Whereas with Barrier, it's like it's just a stun for the opponent. It's just for one turn. It's lingering, so you can't even like. There's very few ways to interact with it.
Yeah.
One of the ways that there was, which is Red Reboot, got banned. So aside from crossout, there's almost no ways to interact with it, and it's just so high impact against certain decks. That it just completely. You have almost like if you're facing like a full or a decent sized board with a barrier behind it, and you're playing one of the decks that loses to barrier. You just have no chance.
Yeah, it's
almost. So I think
as a Sword Soul player, it makes the Labyrinth matchup unwinnable.
It's one of those like because the available counterplay is cross out to and playing the target in your own side or main board and like Cyframe Epsilon to interact with like lingering floodgate normal traps and say you're playing against like a Monadium player that's siding D barrier and you go Epsilon and they go Apollosa, you go okay. Like there's just like, it's like a reasonably available counterplay thing, I think.
And they're not going to barrier until you've summoned a monster most of the time, unless you're playing like a fusion deck and you start with like Brain Fusion or something. Let's say most of the time you can't even Epsilon because you're going to have monsters. So it's like there's so few ways to interact with it. For us, there's literally like the only decent one. And
I have one very funny story about Erad.
Uh-oh.
And I just before I forget it, because I want to get a laugh out of both of you.
All right.
Let's hear it.
I was at a regional the first weekend of August, the Fort Worth regional, and while there, one of my friends that plays at the Shreveport locals, he was playing against a Sword Soul player. He drew his opening hand. He had 4 spell cards, and his opponent, the Sword Soul player, summoned Draco Berserker and Baron, passed, and then flipped Erad and tributed Draco Berserker.
Oh my god.
Sometimes we do what we gotta do.
It's not evidence that the card needs to go or anything, but the fact that he was just playing it because he was like, I can just make Draco Berserker if I see it in my opener.
It is funny with Eradicator, right? I think you're right that Paulie is right that it's like there are times when it's really crazy. Like Kashtira relied on a lot of spells, so all like the feature matches where it showed up was like ripping a whole hand of spells playing against Cash. And that obviously looks really bad. And it was like a problem in tier format resetting it with stuff like Griffin. But like there's a whole bunch of decks that can just play it that don't because it either takes too much setup or like you can't reliably get it. Like I play Fluffle. We were testing it because we have a target in the extra deck for Daredevil, but it's like you have to draw the Erad or you have to be on like Fright for Meister nonsense. Or you have to like also see Erad and a Paulie play, and you've used all your investment on it. So for a lot of decks, it's not worth it to do Eradicator. So
exactly. That's kind of like I guess a more succinct way of saying what I was trying to say before. Like it's very costly. So for what it does, it's it.
Yeah,
sure.
I guess
it could definitely get a ban. I'd be fine with a ban on it.
Do you think
just other cards? I think would.
To be honest.
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of like bans. Do you think, other than like obviously like I think knocking Kashtira down a peg, it's a shockingly like diverse meta. Like if you look at regional results, there's actually a lot of decks you can play right now and a lot of new decks.
Yes.
Do you think anything else needs a hit? Like is there anything that you'd like to see?
Just, like, I'm very much kind of about like I rarely feel that like a particular card or particular deck really needs to get hit. It's more just about like time scales and like, all right, this has been around for like long enough, like it's time for it to get hit, and like it's just to keep things fresh. So right now there's like a lot of new decks that just kind of got introduced, so I definitely think there's not really anything else other than Cash that I think really needs to get hit right now. Let me think. Like, yeah, I mean everything else is either already kind of in balance with the other decks, or we don't yet know whether or not it will be in balance. So, like, if they hit Cash, I feel like all the decks from the summer, there's none that really stand out as, like, okay, that's going to be the best deck. And as far as the new decks, they're too new for it to really be fair to hit them, right? And, like, so we might end up, like, it might end up being where Chimera is just, like, dominantly the best deck, right? But we don't know yet. So, I think, like, if they released a list right now, it probably would be fine to just be, like, a short list with just, like, if they released a list and it was literally just Banner Eyes Heart, I think that would be fine.
I think people would be happy with that. If like honestly, if the list could say like ban a Rise Heart, ban D Barrier, like limit Shifter.
Shifter.
And then yeah, I also want Shifter gone. I think like if they let us keep Gamma, then we can have Shifter. But like as the player going second into Shifter, there's not a lot of counterplay. It's like
yeah, like okay. I mean, in a perfect world, like if I were to like sit down and take the time to really go through every card in the game and what deserves to be banned and what maybe could be limited, or really just what deserves to be banned, there would probably be like several dozen cards. Maybe not, but there would at least be at least a handful of cards that I would probably ban. Like Shifter is a good example. I probably, I don't know if I really Shifter should be banned. It's hard to say. I mean, in my perfect world, I would probably have almost every floodgate get banned. Like I would probably ban Shifter, Barrier, like Summon Limit, Fragrance, Rivalry, Tikaboo, etc. But I don't know if I actually have the power to do that. I have to put more thought into it. I don't know. It's a tough. I'm not a fan of floodgates for the game, but there's arguments to be made for them, and they certainly have, like I said, they certainly have their weaknesses. Whereas, like wherein, like for example, how both players can sometimes end up getting stuck under your floodgate, and then you're kind of both at a stalemate. So I don't know, but I'm trying to think if there's any other card that really stands out that I think should get banned. I think Tactics should be limited. Actually. I think Tactics is a very high impact. Sometimes it's just a really high impact card, and is going to end up eventually being an issue something that people get tired of and probably needs to be limited.
Yeah, especially as like interaction gets more diverse too. Like you got decks coming out now that pull stuff out of the hand, playing on like your opponent's turn. There's a lot more ways for Tactics to be turned on in like a detrimental way. Like the existence of Zeus makes Tactics just an unbelievable card sometimes.
Yes.
So there's and like that's just gonna keep happening more and more. And then everybody's gonna be like, okay, well we'll just play 2 Thrust and a Tactics. But then Thrust also has its own weaknesses too.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say they might have to also limit Thrust. They probably, but no Thrust. Yeah. Thrust's fair because you can never. It's never really a good going first card. It's kind of only a going second card, so like, you can't really main it. So Thrust's probably fair at 3.
Yeah, it's like going first. It's like you either have to like main deck a card that you really don't want to draw going second, and then hope that like Thrust is setting your target, or you have to have like some in-engine card that you want to be playing. So like if Flu might main deck it to play Dreaming Town, but there's like if Flu wants to go get Dreaming Town with Thrust. Sure. Yeah, that's good with me. Yeah. Okay. That's actually interesting to hear your perspective about like we can keep it really minimal to what needs to go. Makes sense.
I'm really interested to hear where you think the format might go, especially after a potential ban list. So let's just say ban list comes out tomorrow, and the only card on that ban list is a Rise Heart to 1.
Zero.
You mean zero?
You mean to 0? It's already out.
Yeah, 0. You're right. I'm sorry, 0. That's what I meant. It's banned. That 1 Rise Heart goes to 0. In that situation where that 1 Rise Heart goes to 0, is there maybe that top tier, that top echelon of decks that you think players need to be looking out for when they go to Vancouver or Costa Rica, especially like those things that you're like, okay, you're going to see this at the top tables and you might not even realize it.
I think the new releases all change things a lot. Because I would have said before this, I think if Rise Heart was gone, I think Dragon was like a really, really good deck. I think the Worlds format hurt it a lot, to where in Worlds format, I don't actually think it was like crazy overpowered. But in TCG, like for Nats, I wanted to play Dragon for Nats, but I didn't have enough experience with it. But I do think Dragon was probably the best deck for WCQ. And like, I think it's so if Cash got banned, then especially, I think Dragon would have been like really, really good. But with the new decks, how does Dragon compare to like Chimera and Rescue Ace? I don't know. I think Chimera is like a really good deck potentially. I think it's gonna take some time for people to like figure out the best build, but like that's a deck I have my eye on. Probably like, and then like right, there's Unchained, there's Rescue Ace, there's all these new decks that are like doing really well, but we're not 100% sure yet, right? Perhaps they're being slightly overhyped, and people will end up realizing they're not quite as good as we think, or perhaps they're gonna end up being like dominant decks in the coming months. There's no way to know. It's kind of it's such a wide open format. I haven't, like I said, I haven't tested enough myself yet to really be able to
Sure.
make an educated opinion on it. But I think some of the decks to watch are definitely Chimera, Pearly, Dragon. Rescue seems to be doing pretty well. I've played a lot with that myself. It's fragile sometimes, but it's a solid deck. I don't think it's like a dominant best deck, but it's a good deck. But yeah, I think like Chimera, Dragon, those are like two of the ones I think would be like the closest to like a potential best deck. And then like Rescue Ace is a good deck, Pearly's a good deck, Unchained seems to be a good deck. It's gonna be interesting to see if Runic variants fall out of the format or if they kind of stay, because that's something that hasn't been seeing much play recently. But like that's certainly still a great engine, and like Sprite, those are still great engines. Branded Despia is probably going to morph into more of the Chimera stuff, and then I'm trying to remember what other decks there was at Nats, or if that was kind of most of them. I'm trying to remember.
Lab?
Lab's an interesting question, because like at Worlds, everyone kind of thought that was going to be like one of the decks to beat, just because it didn't have any hits, so like, everyone except for Skill Dream being limited. But maybe the Skill Dream limit just really hurt a lot, but also I think it was largely because everyone was so prepared for the deck. Like everyone I think had like 3 Bell on their side, or some combination of at least Bell or like Cosmics and board wipes if they didn't have Bell. So like, and I just think like as a Labyrinth player, like it was just so hard to make it through like a whole event, like because everyone had those cards in their deck. So I think like Lab's deck is very much like if people prepare for it, like if enough people in the room are like have already built their deck like with at least in their side to like beat it, I think it's very hard for that deck to do well. And when people aren't prepared for it, I think it's a deck that can definitely really shine. Like at Vegas this year, where Ryan just went like 13-0 his personal record or something like that. So
that's insane.
Well, Ryan's also one of the best players. Great, Ryan's awesome.
He's an insane player too.
Ryan
absolutely.
Ryan is unbelievable.
Yeah, Ryan's like easy. Like I put Ryan like top 5 in North America, like easy. So Ryan's a great player. But yeah, Lab is like, but yeah, there's, so I think like Lab's not going to be like a best deck, but he'll probably still see play in the format.
Cool.
For sure. So I think that we are on the wrap up right here. It is getting close to time. So,
oh no, not time of the round. Oh no.
Oh no.
Time.
Proceed to end of phase.
Activate Scatter Shot. Read the patron names.
Well, Paulie, I really want to thank you for coming on to our show today. It really has been a hell of a run for you these last, really the last 6 months, but I guess like a year and a half, but like the last 6 months have been insane, right? Yeah. The 250th YCS, the points playoffs into Worlds, just seems like one after another. You got any closing thoughts on maybe where that next step is for somebody that might be looking for it?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say what I always say to everyone, to all players. Just practice as much as you can, and just keep testing. And make sure you play outside of locals. Like, don't test and sit down and like really take your time with a friend and just like collaborate. And when you play test, remember the goal is not to win, the goal is to learn. So take your time. Help each other, see the lines, go back, try different options, try different lines.
Open-handed.
Yes, exactly. That's one of the first things. Yeah, play open-handed, collaborate, and just be able to go into the tournament with as much knowledge and as much practice as you can, because modern Yu-Gi-Oh is the game has reached a point of complexity where you can, even if you're a great player, you can no longer sit down and see the correct lines and correctly like anticipate all of the interactions that are going to happen in the game states just from like theory and from like intuition. You have to have just gone through the interactions and the different game states in practice. Gotcha. Yeah.
Well,
game is very complicated game.
Yeah, then some. I'm gonna read our patron names, and I would love to hear your input on some of these patron names. They are
excited to hear.
Something. So, you can stop me at any time if any of these really strike you, because you'll get it. All right, so starting at the top, a huge thank you to Bring Red Reboot back to 3.
No.
This is the start.
I can't do that. No.
We could. Martin.
I almost feel like Reboot's more fair than like Lightning Storm and Harpies in some ways. Harpies should get banned. That's a card that probably should go back in mails. I don't know why that's legal. I do not want that card. Definitely needs to be banned. Why is Harpies legal? Thank you for reminding me. That's actually the third card. Arise, Barrier, Harpies. Thank you for reminding me the third card that should go on the
shout
back
out
to 0.
to
It's just too volatile.
Shout out to Juhu and Korean.
Yes. Yes. I hit him with that in round 2 on stream. It keeps happening to him.
We gotta get it out.
Brutal. So, thank you to Kane Martin, Zyphorus, Big Stinky, Blue Eyes' Best, Copium, branded in Chanel number 5. I love that one so much. Broken Boy 13, Ding Dong's Hostess of the Yang Zing, Gold Secrets coming back when, Konami, HGH Cyber, I used to play Rogue, but then my mom got a job, Is Canada Nickelback?
Great. Is what back? What's the last one?
Is Canada Nickelback?
It's an old.
I love
reference.
Nickelback.
Sonny.
It checks out.
That makes way too much sense. Sonny.
Yeah.
I have a Nickelback T-shirt that I wear like every week.
How the hell did we wind up like this, and why weren't we able? That was Sonny. We had an argument about was it Nickelback and Shinedown or Shinedown and the Beatles?
No,
and,
it was Shinedown versus the Beatles. I said the Beatles sound better. Twitter disagreed, and then I said that Shinedown was nothing but Nickelback light.
Is Canada Nickelback is a direct quote from Sonny? That doesn't make any sense. So somebody has just made it their name for life now.
There's no way that's a direct quote.
No, it is. It's a direct quote. I have the audio. I'll pull it up for you. Keep reading.
Go find it. John Leal, level 4 Fire Warrior Gaming. Mountain Man, Nibiru, Cool, Chain Misk, Oatmeal Spaghetti. Only 2 thrusts. Sorry, it's all I had. Owen Alvarado.
I mean, that card should be played at 2 anyway, I think, because it's... Yeah, okay, side note, sorry, keep going.
No, there's definitely way more insinuated there. Pistol Place Pendulums, Silver Hope.
Oh.
Understanding and reading are 2 different things. Virtually Savior's World. As anyone read Toy Vendor, it's kind of like reading Miss Scars. That one is spelled it's bad.
Somebody's been spelling
there's
Toy
lore
Vendor
on that
wrong for weeks just to piss me off.
It's been about a year.
How do you spell vendor wrong?
They spelled it Vender for a really long time.
Instead of D-O-R.
And then I called them out once.
He pointed it out.
They just started making the rest of it even worse.
Yeah, I just want you to see what we have to read here. This is the name as it's written in Patreon. So, he sent it to the group chat. Aaron Gardner,
Ooh.
Alexander Chan, Astami, Ashless Chaps, Atsuyo Simpa the Silver Castle, Blackwing Silverwind the Ascendant is the best floodgate, Boxwine, come on and get your game on, Duty Booty, Dragon Maidenless Behavior, I'm about to wreak a glamour tribute for Costis, plant nuts in your mouth, Cam the anti-magical hats guy, that's my friend Cam who I hit with magical hats into Gear Town in Edison format one too many times. Neshi, Old Man Red, pin code 143, and slaking it up. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the podcast. And before we go, I have one last question for you, Mr. Paulie Aronson, world champion of the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. Would you consider Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess, to be a floodgate?
No, definitely not. That's interesting.
All right, thank you, everyone. I've been needing that for years.
Okay.
I've been needing that. It's been a debate that's raged in our community for so long. You have no idea.
Really?
Yeah. Patrick Hoban went on a podcast with Farfa and said it was a floodgate, and ever since, we've been fighting
back and forth.
I've never thought of it as a floodgate. It doesn't feel like a floodgate. Oh, maybe it's because of how vulnerable it's just being like attacked over a lot of times. Maybe that's why it doesn't feel quite like that. I don't know.
It's because it's not continuous. It runs out.
But yeah.
Anyway, thank you everybody for listening to today's episode of the podcast, and of course, thank you, Paulie, for coming on and spending some time here with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. With that said,
it was fun. Hope everyone had fun.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, have a great week, everybody.
I don't have a card pun to end the episode, but somebody brought up gold secrets. I got 3 gold secret rekindlings here. Please give it back.
Hey!
Please give it back.